let's make sure we talk about conflict because that's a fun one.
It is.
So if we're not addressing,
you and I may be the only ones who think.
But I think again we can give a different perspective to the listener to help them understand why it's a good thing.
Today we're joined by the incredible Patrick Lyons, a seasoned expert with over 25 years of experience as an author, speaker, and executive coach. Throughout his career, Patrick has worn many hats, but his true passion lies in helping family businesses reach their fullest potential through his work as the founder and CEO of the Lyons Group. Patrick and his team specialize in providing valuable tools that foster better communication and collaboration, both within the business and beyond. He works to help family-run organizations break through obstacles, scale effectively, and bring their long-term vision to life. In addition to his work with family businesses, Patrick hosts The Frustrated CEO. In this podcast, he interviews top leaders, uncovering their most significant challenges and sharing actionable insights and best practices. So, join me, Angela Gill Nelms, on today's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast, where I'm joined each week by industry experts for intimate and eye-opening discussions about the challenges and joys facing the leaders of today. Listen in and get ready to scale your company, grow your brand, and unlock your full badass potential. I am really excited. Patrick and I have had an opportunity to talk off screen, and also I've delved into the information that you and your group do. Super excited. Cannot wait to dig in. Why don't you start us off and tell us who Patrick is as a human being?
Gosh, okay, who I am as a human being. And first of all, thank you. I'm excited to be here. From the moment we were first connected, I've been looking forward to this. Who am I as a human being? I'm a husband. I'm a father of 5. I'm a grandfather of 4 with a 5th coming. That's really where I think that's where I go most. That's who I am as a human being. It's not that, it doesn't sound that exciting as I
it does. It does. I mean, look, I have one child and I'm pretty confident God said, okay, this is all you and can handle. So you take this one. And so I love families. And I guess that really ties a lot into the dynamics of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to then just dig in. Well, one, you are in Oregon.
Yes.
This is college football national championship time. Oregon did struggle. How are you feeling? Are you settled?
So, okay, I'm not originally from Oregon.
Okay.
I certainly was rooting for them, right? You kind of jump on the statewide bandwagon. I can tell you there are a lot of people in full-on mourning. But to me, I've moved on. So I'm good. There shouldn't be any tears through the course of our...
Well, not any tears about this, but if you have tears about anything else, it's totally acceptable.
I
I live in Georgia. I'm a Georgia Tech alum. However, I have quite a few friends who are Georgia Bulldogs. So we are also in a state of mourning in this state as well. So let's dig in deeper though. Okay. So one of the things that you shared with me is that one of your missions is to transform frustration into empowerment. And that really, I am really big about empowering, and really the idea of, well, obviously Be Brave, Be Badass is all about empowering. Okay. I hate the word delegating because I really think instead you're empowering people to do their best work, to whatever. And so I want to talk about that mission. And so my producer, Katie, hates when I do this because I'm about to do this like multi-level question to you. Because I just realized we haven't even introduced and you haven't shared what the Lyons Group is and a little bit about that passion. So I want to talk about that, and then I'll remind you to tell us about this frustration into empowerment mission.
Okay. So the Lyons Group, we are a consulting company. We support specifically family-run businesses, family-run organizations. And we are a family-run business. We've got family members in the business. We have a lot of experience supporting family-run businesses, and I think our passion, the reason that's our focus as a business, is because that's really our heart as people. Is our heart is for the family, right? And at the root of every family business is a family trying to do something good in the community, in their market, in the world. And so our belief is, if we're supporting the families who are at the heart of these family-run businesses, then that's our way of strengthening our communities, strengthening the local community, the region, the state, ideally the world. It's really how do we empower these families? Because I think one of the we like to say in business, it's not personal, it's just business. But in a family-run business, it is personal. It you can't help it. So our expertise, our focus is on bringing basic business principles that can help a business be successful, but really focusing, peeling back the layers to get down to the family relationships, which might be husband and wife, it might be fathers and sons, or fathers and daughters, or mothers and sons, and some of the stories that I'll tell at the end of my life are not how we helped this business double their revenue, but how we, in the process, restored these parents and these kids, or these siblings, or even this couple that the business was tearing them apart. And so that's really our passion is to be lights in the darkness, to change the community, change the world, one business, one couple, one family, one person at a time.
Okay, so I have family members that have done family businesses,
Okay.
and I've seen the dynamics of those over multiple generations. My grandfather and his brother went into business together. My father and uncle went into business together. And so I grew up seeing family dynamics in business. So that makes me wonder, what is it that brought you into your focus on this? So before we dive into the work, tell me what your reason, what your why is that you chose this as, because what was it about these potentially complicated dynamics and the challenges that really captivated you and sparked your passion for this line of business?
Yeah. So I'd say that the passion for our focus on family-run businesses comes from two specific areas. First, going back right about 20 years from today, or 20 years-ish, 20 years ago, my wife and I, we've been married now 28 years, our marriage fell apart. We burned it to the ground. We did everything wrong. And it really is just by the grace of God that we are still together, that it was restored. So we've since added the miracle child to that, because she wouldn't exist if we had gotten divorced like we were kind of heading. And so out of that, what started back then, our commitment to each other, our commitment, again, it's a faith thing, right? For us, it was all right, God, you've given us this gift. What do we do with it? And our hope at the time was, if we could just help one couple to not make the same stupid mistakes that we've made, then it makes it makes sense of everything we had gone through, right? You're doing something with this chaos that really God had delivered us from. So from then until now, we've been doing marriage ministry. We've been working with couples. And so we've always had a heart for that. Parallel to that, for the last 15 years, I've been running this business. And when we started this business, we weren't really just focused on family-run businesses. We were focused on all businesses. Because, again, if you can improve the relationships among the leadership of a team, if you can help bring basic strategic planning and execution, if you bring basic business principles to any business, we can help them be successful. But as through the last 15 years, the stories that stick with me, right? The ones that are, you love every client, but the ones that just hit you at a core, like I said, the stories that I'll tell at the end of my life always come back to the ones where in the process of fixing the business, we restored the family. And that was not the intent going in. The intent was to fix the business. The intent was to help the business be successful. But in the process, when you're restoring these families, and that was like, that's purpose, that's meaning, that's more than just helping a company grow their revenue or become more profitable or serve their customers better. It's like, wow. So those two paths, one, the marriage ministry work, and then these success stories of restoring families while we're just doing business consulting, they've been converging for 20 years. And they finally just converged to the point where, honestly, even some of our clients, even some of our business clients, Dana's my wife, we do marriage ministry with them. We do marriage work with the owners of the business because they are stronger together. When they are aligned and on the same page, when the intimacy is the glue that keeps them together, and not just the physical, but the emotional, the spiritual. Like when that's the glue that's holding them together, the business benefits, the business wins. Whereas when the opposite happens, when a couple is torn apart, they will tear the business apart with them. Or, when siblings are torn apart, or parents in second and third generation, when they are torn apart, they tear the business apart with them. So it's kind of these two divergent paths. Honestly, I resisted those two paths crossing for the longest time. Because I kept...
Okay, tell me more. First off, before I forget,
yes,
one of the comments that you made early on was this concept in business where people say, it's not personal, it's just business. And I call bullshit on that because I'm like, that's like in a relationship where you say, it's not you, it's me, right? Like, seriously, no.
By the way, I've heard that my whole life. It's always me. I've always heard, it's always me.
So the reason I call BS on that is that I strongly believe every type of company, every type of business, it's all about relationships. It's all about seeing humans, as people and people. And I've been a serial chief operating officer, and my relationship with the CEOs that I've worked with and myself as a CEO, and my relationship with my team or those who are like in the inner circle as we work to guide and lead the group, it means everything. And it's always personal. And there's always a piece of personality and personal struggles and your own baggage and all of that ties in across the board. And so I think that from my perspective, just, adding to the audience, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I'm not in a family business, I don't need to listen to the rest of this episode. I say you do, because even if it's not a family business, for not saying you should expand your clients, but anyways, for the audience listening to it, I think these dynamics fall into all businesses, especially at the C-level at businesses.
Yeah. So I'll say this to that listener. We don't turn away non-family businesses. If somebody needs us and we're the right support system for them, absolutely. We do have clients who are not traditional family-run businesses. It's just that that's really our focus and that's our sweet spot. But I'll say, going back to the beginning, the concepts that we use, the tools, the approach that we use with family-run businesses is the same as what we were using back with, or the same that we still use with traditional businesses, non-family businesses. They work. It really is about relationship. And, we say that. We say it in different ways because we do say it's not personal, it's just business. And yet, everybody's heard this. People don't quit companies, they quit bosses, right? They quit leaders. That's saying it is personal, right? I'm leaving because I don't feel like this person cares about me or has my back, or that I even like this person, that I respect this person. That's personal. It just becomes that much more complex when you're talking about family, right? Where you're You don't get to like
where you're spending Thanksgiving and Christmas and all the birthdays together.
Yeah, right? You quit the job, but you still see each other at family barbecues, and you see each other, but you don't talk to each other, or you keep it really superficial because you've got unresolved conflict. That kind of stuff. I mean, that's our passion. Let's fix. Actually, for a while, we were even saying, we don't just fix the business; we fix Thanksgiving, so that you can actually be in the same room. Yeah, right. Yeah.
I love that. Like, I absolutely just got chills saying that, because I think that those heavy dynamics, we just finished the holidays. So we're recording this in January. We're not releasing it in January, but we were recording it at the beginning of January. So we just finished Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. And hey, when you talk to people and say, how are your holidays? You hear those that had great ones with their families, and those that avoided the holidays, or those who don't have a family or don't have, and those dynamics play a big role in our lives. And so I'm glad that you shared that. Okay, so one of the things, so reading about what you do at the Lyons Group, you say that you combine strategic partnership and deep insight to help reignite your business growth, restore alignment, and create lasting change for both company, culture, and outcomes. So those are those three things, right? It's reignite, restore, and create.
Yeah.
And you then tie into culture and outcomes. So my question to you is, I mean, I've spent my whole career, like, I'm an expert at building amazing cultures because I believe in the relationship part. I believe in seeing humans as humans. And when I read what the Lyons Group does, and I read that sentence, I thought culture in a family and culture in a family business unit. So can you talk a little bit about that? And then I love, like, everyone should pull up your website. I love in the website how you map out how it works and you have the different steps. That is, like, that's a project manager's dream site. So well done. But let's talk about culture, and then let's talk really about how you dig into that piece.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not surprised that you said you love culture, and then as kind of this throwaway line, you're like, I'm an expert in building really great cultures. There's a correlation there, and there's a lot of research, obviously. You know, the cool thing is, because it's 2025. You don't really have...
You nailed that, by the way. By the way, if that was your goal to hit 2025, not 2024, you nailed it.
I know what year it is, yeah. Hey, sometimes that's like...
It's still the beginning of January, so 2025 is new. I have to give you the kudos there.
Thank you, I appreciate that. There's enough research now that you don't have to explain to people or the importance of culture. But I do think we still find that we have to do a lot of demystifying with leaders to help them understand what culture actually is. It's not
I love this. I'm excited.
It's not just happy people. In fact, a lot of what are marketed or sold as culture surveys are really just engagement surveys, which are all focused on the people. Like, do we have happy people? Even, do you have a friend at work? It's connection. Do you work well in teams? That kind of stuff. People are certainly an important part of culture, but there are several other inputs into culture that go beyond just the people. And the importance of a leader understanding that is a lot of those inputs are the leader's responsibility. And so to just think, I'm going to put more snacks in the break room, or I'm going to put more, right? I'm going to unlimited PTO, or that you're only really impacting one segment of an organization culture. I want to tie this back to what you said earlier, and why there was real wisdom in what you said, and insight for the listener. All the research today says the single biggest impact on any organization culture is the senior leader. So the fact that you liked it, the fact that you love the relationships, means that's how you're coming to work. Like, you're going to work with the intent of, I want to build relationships with these people. I want to pour into them. I want to learn about them. I want to position them for success, right? So you having that mentality means everybody within your scope feels that. You had the biggest, everywhere you were, you had the biggest impact on your culture. And so as a leader, if you've got an organization that lacks accountability, grab a mirror, right? If you've got an organization where there's just a lot of gossip going on all throughout the ranks, grab a mirror, right? If you've got an organization, like let's go back to the family. If you've got an organization that can't resolve conflict, grab a mirror. Like, how well are you addressing conflict in healthy ways, in bridge building ways, not bridge burning ways that invite dissent and seek to find win-win, not the zero-sum game where there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser. And that's why when you add in the family dynamic, where it is personal and we've got unresolved issues or conflicts. I mean, that stuff builds and then we're stuck seeing each other at every holiday and family takes sides. Man, when that happens, if the senior leader is the biggest impact on the organization culture, that becomes the culture, right? You have a culture of kind of a dysfunctional family.
You stole my next question, which was going to be, which thank you for doing that because it was beautiful. But my next question was going to be, okay, you're focused on family businesses. What is different about the dynamics and specific to those compared to other businesses? And so, as you've said repeatedly, they're doing Thanksgiving and Christmas together as like in their homes as a family, not just your office Thanksgiving and Christmas together. And it has generational impact. Right. It ties into so much as that. Okay. So when you're looking at these family businesses and they start, because one of your things is your focus is really about reigniting, restarting and creating. Right. So I'm picturing this family business that's reached a standstill. So they've hit the proverbial wall.
Plateau.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, they've plateaued, whatever we want to say, and they're struggling to scale and grow beyond a certain point, okay? At a state such as this, what are your initial steps that you use to go in and, as you mentioned, start peeling back the onion?
Yeah. This is part of our own evolution. 15 years ago, our primary focus was on culture, right? Because good luck executing without your people, right? So if you want to scale and grow, you need people. You need engaged people. It's why, as I said earlier, there's so much more to understanding what culture is than just the people. There are a lot of inputs that are the responsibility of leadership. So when an organization has plateaued, 15 years ago, we used to try to go in and figure out what's going on in the culture. We would run organization culture surveys, whether that be formal or informal. You gather a lot of data, and then you start trying to understand, what's getting in our way. Like if we've hit the wall, what are the walls, and how do we help bring people together to remove those? What we learned through the years is if all of the work is done on the ground floor, and we're not addressing either, the chaos and the dysfunction, and maybe those are strong words, but if we're not addressing.
I think they are strong words because I think they are reality. I mean, we have chaos and dysfunction in all organizations, even if it's just to a small level, right? I mean, I can think my own business, I have some chaos and dysfunction, right? And it's small, right? But I'm in tune with the individuals, so I see it. And I also am not conflict aversion. I'm not averse to conflict and having those challenging conversations, which I want to talk about as family challenging conversations. I'd
love to. Well, let's make sure we talk about conflict because that's a fun one.
It is.
So if we're not addressing,
you and I may be the only ones who think
but I think again we can give a different perspective to the listener to help them understand why it's a good thing. Okay, so
sorry, but carry on.
No, it's good. I love it. Okay, so what we found is if we were addressing if we were just fixing the culture or working on fixing the culture without really knowing that the senior leadership is the biggest impact on the culture, if we weren't working hard in the C-suite or at that executive team level, that, you know what, actually what ended up happening is we ended up coaching a lot of frontline workers out of the business because they would start to get excited about what the organization could be, and then they would have these realizations, we need our leadership to do this too, and they just want you to fix us. Like, if our leaders aren't going to engage in this process, we've kind of gone about as far as we can go. And so for us, we had to flip it. So to answer your question in a really long way, the way we do start today is we start at that executive team level. It's one word, and that's alignment. How do you get a senior team? How do you get your executive team, your C-suite on the same page and pulling in one direction? Because if your leadership team is pulling in different directions, you will split the organization right with you. And that's what we see in so many organizations that have plateaued. They've got great ideas. They've got good products. They've got good customer bases, but they're pulling in different directions. And when the leadership is not aligned, they will pull the organization apart with them. Go back to the family. When mom and dad are fighting, the kids are forced to choose sides. Whether you think you're hiding it from them or not, you're not. And they choose sides. And that happens in family businesses as well. People align with either their functional leader or who they like better or who they connect with more, and you will pull the organization apart. So much of our work is grounded in getting an executive team on one page and pulling in one direction. And the beauty of that, when that happens, gosh, there's so much to this. Helping them understand that alignment is a journey and not a destination. Again, go back to the marriage. If you've been married for any length of time, I guarantee you and your spouse have not always been on the same page or aligned or, in intimacy, as they call it. You ebb and flow, right? As work pressures happen, or as family, as health, as kids come along, you ebb and flow. You are aligned and then you're misaligned. And the couples that make it are the ones that they have two things. They have the tools to come back into alignment, and they have the commitment to each other. They have the commitment to the relationship that this matters to me, and therefore I'm going to use the tools. If we have the tools and the commitment, we're going to do the work to come back into alignment. It's the same with an executive team of any company. You may be aligned today. Usually where you see the most alignment is when there's an offsite and they go offsite for 2 to 3 days and they create a strategic plan and everybody gets excited. Yes, we're aligned. And then the door opens and you start trying to implement it. And that's where you realize, wait, you thought that meant this. I thought it meant that. Or wait, now there are new pressures, new priorities, suddenly we don't have as much.
Or what seemed like a good idea in that conversation, now in implementation.
Absolutely.
It's not. And I'm a big believer of, for example, company values. I think not that I'm just a believer in company values. I'm sure everyone is. What I'm a believer in is that they should not be static values that you developed at a retreat at the beginning of your company.
Right. And
now they've been the same values for the last 5 or 10 years and you're sticking to them. No, instead, I'm a believer in values, that the goal of values is to represent who you are as a company and how you want to behave as a company,
yes.
Right? And so they should be more of a living document. Not that you're constantly changing your values. I'm not saying that at all. But at least on an annual basis, you should review those values as a whole team and say, hey, which of these are we really living and which are we not? And does that mean that we now need to adjust our sales because we really should be living these other values that we felt strongly about? Or does it mean that we need to modify our values to who we are in this day and age?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of what you were just saying, is that when you do an offsite retreat, everything seems perfect when you're in a room and you're throwing things up on a dry erase board and you're having some snacks and you're having fun and you're whatever. You're doing all those things. And those are very important moments because they create those lasting memories and you're more vulnerable and all these sorts of things, right?
Yeah,
exactly. You have that shared experience. However, when you go back into the real world, that's when the proof is in the pudding. And then to be open to saying, okay, you know that thing we talked about at the retreat that we thought was a really great idea? Hey, we just tried to implement it on our customer experience team or in our development team or whatever, and it didn't go so great, right? It's not so swell. So let's revisit that now in a team and figure out how we're going to now modify, tweak, improve, whatever it is you need to do to make it actionable.
And one of the things that, yes to everything you said, one of the things that happens, we hear this, right, from the executive teams, there's like it feels like someone let the air out of the balloon. Like they're deflated when they go to implement, and then they realize we aren't as aligned as we thought. And so we've heard them say, so was that all a lie? Was that not true? Were we not aligned? And that's where understanding that alignment is a journey and not a destination really comes into play. No, what you felt was alignment. Now you're misaligned. The teams that make it are the ones that have the tools and the ones that have the commitment to each other to do the work to come back into alignment. It's a never-ending process. Every time new information comes in, you have to come back together and make sure that you're aligned. Every time a team member changes, the work of alignment never ends. But you've got to have the commitment and you have to have the tools. Now on the core values piece, I think the word that we use a lot is how do you bring them to life? How do you make sure they are alive and breathing? And our challenge to every organization is yes, revisit them, yes to what you said, and also use them in the course of your operations. So for instance, any business problem that you're facing as a team, ask the question, what do our core values say about that? So if we've got, if we're redesigning our sales compensation because sales are off, great. What do our core values say about this plan? If we're trying to figure out what direction, do we go after a new customer or a new market? What do our core values say about that? If our culture isn't necessarily where we want it to be, what do our values say about that? And if you're not doing that, then you're missing an opportunity, A, to leverage these really powerful things called core values, but B, to intentionally build the kind of organization culture you want. Like your core values, you should be able to know or discern somebody's core values by just going and walking the halls or hanging out by the water cooler and listening to conversations. You should hear.
I love this. One of my favorite things to do is to have I also am a big believer in recognizing amazing work across the teams. Mm-hmm. And so one of my favorite things to do is, in fact, my previous companies, we've used a software called Lattice, and you can give kudos. And one of the things I love that's great about that is that they've built into the software where you can give kudos and then you can tag to the kudos which values it aligned with.
Right.
And that is powerful because it's constantly reminding us, wow, Katie did this value of, doing what we say we're going to do or something like that, right? I'm just making up something. And here's an example of how she did it, right? So it also reminds people that we're paying attention to our values.
Right.
They're important to us.
Right.
And it's live examples of how you also can live those values. I mean, it's so beneficial to tie in those two things in a consistent trend. So it becomes a part of your culture to give those kudos and also a part to sit, as you just said, when those challenging times, because now I want to talk about conflict because I love conflict.
Yes,
right?
yeah, let's do it.
Now is the time. Let's do it. So when you get into conflict, also to say, okay, wait, we have this challenging moment. Let's run this conflict resolution and keep our values intact during the process. So let's talk about conflict.
Okay.
And also, you've mentioned so many different times tools. So I'm excited to hear a few of the tools that you share with your clients.
Okay. Well, where do you want to start? Let's start
conflict.
with conflict. Okay, let's start with
Dig
conflict.
it,
Okay.
yes.
To me, I think one of the most important things for anyone, not even just in business, because our passion is the families at the core of businesses. So it's really anybody, is to understand conflict is a great thing. Like, we are typically conflict avoidant, but conflict is a great thing because conflict tells me that you're invested. I learned this. So much of this is actually a tool. So much of the tools and what we teach in business, I learned in marriage class 20 years ago. Like, we really had to rebuild from scratch. So I learned this model, if you'll indulge me.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so every relationship is in one of three states. The first is intimacy. It's where we all want to be, right? And again, it's more than just physical. It's emotional. It's spiritual. It's where you can just sit together and be. It's where you in intimacy, you couldn't imagine being anyplace else, right? That's where we all aspire to be. The second place is conflict. That's the second state that every relationship, you're in one of these three states. The second one is conflict. It's exactly what it sounds like, but it doesn't always mean fighting. It might mean negotiation. It might mean we've got disagreements, right? It doesn't have to be all out fighting. It just means we got some things that we've got to work through, that we're constantly working at and working through. And then the third state is withdrawal, which is where we go when we've been in conflict too long and it has become unhealthy. So understand that conflict itself is not a bad thing. It's how we deal with the conflict that either makes it healthy or unhealthy. When conflict is unhealthy for too long or unsafe, right? If there's physical abuse or verbal abuse, or if there's the condescension, there's the discounting of each other's opinions, or instead of listening to understand, I'm listening to respond, and I'm just forcing my opinion because conflict is about winning. When it's unsafe for too long, we go to withdrawal. And withdrawal is where we disconnect emotionally because it just hurts too much to stay at the table and fight or stay in conflict. But the important thing to understand is in withdrawal, all the issues are still there. We've just disconnected them. We've given up. We've said it's just not worth it. It's not, like, why bother?
Which I think I would venture to say, and there are no stats that I know on this, but I would venture to say really the majority of companies and executive teams live in withdrawal.
Yes. Okay. The most important thing to understand about this model is that it's linear. So if you are in withdrawal and you want to get to intimacy, you can't jump over.
You have to go through conflict.
You got to go right back into conflict.
Yes.
You can't jump over it. But what you have to do is you have to do it differently. You have to use the tools. You have to create space. You have to give each other the benefit of the doubt. And so in the business, I mentioned that's a marriage model that I learned. But we apply that in the business world, and we change it, right? Because intimacy feels like a weird word when you're talking about an executive team, but you could lay that model
I think
across.
it's like mental health. Mental health has this stigma to it that you just mean that someone's like psychotic or addicted or something like that. That's not what it means at all. And so we changed to using mental well-being or mental fitness or something like that. I feel like intimacy is the same thing. We've tied it to one portion of it without understanding the whole gamut of what it covers.
Yeah, that is fair, and I do agree with you. It has people hear it and they instantly make their own assumptions. But to make it to overcome that, we call it engagement, right? Engaged, conflict, and disengaged. And the reason why that model works is to help leaders understand. Who do leaders get frustrated with? They get frustrated with the people that just complain all the time. They get frustrated with the people who are combative. And my challenge to the leader is, okay, yes, maybe that person needs some help trying to figure out how to present their argument a better way. But that person cares more than the person who is disengaged and has given up because that person isn't even going to fight for change anymore. That person they're not even invested. So go back to the marriage model. Very, very few affairs happen from intimacy, right? Very few affairs actually happen from conflict. Most affairs happen from withdrawal because I've just given up. I'm disconnected emotionally. I'm not feeling anything in this relationship. And then I meet somebody who lights a spark, and I haven't felt that in a long time. And good people do bad things all the time, right? So that's where affairs happen. If you look at where do most people quit your organization, it's from that place of withdrawal, that disengagement, where like they have just given up that it's ever going to get any better. That's it. They have no passion. They're disengaged. You do the minimum to try to keep your job, but you're not happy. You're not going to go above and beyond. You're not going to, that's where affairs happen. That's where I'm going to float my resume out there and see what's there. And I'm going to leave for $1 more.
Or even less.
Or yeah, you're right. I might even leave for less. That's a great point. Because I'm not really connected. I don't feel any connection to this organization. So as a leader, the ones you have to be more concerned about, stop trying to silence the people who are combative. Figure out how do you engage them. Teach them how to present their arguments in a more healthy way, in a constructive way. Don't silence them because they actually care more than the ones.
I love this so much.
Than the ones who have kind of given up and have gone quiet. I do want to say this. People in all three of those categories are great people. They are great people. It's not like the ones in withdrawal are bad. They're not. They want to be in intimacy with you. They want to be engaged. I've never met anybody who's disengaged and happy about it. But you're going to have to meet them where they are. You're going to have to invite them into conflict again. You're going to have to bring them.
So what are the tools you use? Let's make this actionable because I know you're actionable. I saw that on your website when you said how it works. Here are the steps. I said, okay, Patrick is an action-minded, step-minded person. How do you convert? How do you transition? How do you help someone who's disengaged?
Yeah.
Move into conflict? Because sometimes I find some of those individuals, it is a core to who they are. They are absolutely terrified. I think that a lot of times comes back from their childhood and some of those things where when they were in conflict, they were shot down and they've learned this behavior of just being the easy person, the middle child, the happy person, right? So how do you move someone from withdrawn, disengaged into conflict?
Yeah, by making conflict safe. And that's, so a lot of the tools are, you hear the phrase psychological safety, and sometimes I worry that that's getting tired, but there's really something to it. Again, if you go back to the marriage, or a romantic relationship, if the conflict isn't safe, I'm learning that I'm just not going to go there with you. And conflict can be unsafe all kinds of ways. The question is, how do we punish each other for saying things we don't like to hear? It doesn't always have to be physical. In a marriage, I could give you the silent treatment. I can storm out and go to the bar, right? I can be absent. I can go to my mother's. There are all kinds of ways that in a marriage, right, we can withhold physical intimacy. We punish each other in the business sense as well in different ways. Now, I can cut you off. I can make sure you get all the crap projects. I can belittle you in front of and it may not even be belittling you, but you see that when somebody else tries to raise an issue, you see them get smacked around or hung out to dry for it, and you go, "Whew, I'm not doing that." Right?
Exactly.
I'm out. So there are things that leaders do that either make it safe or unsafe for people to engage. It's hearing past the delivery to understand what's the why behind it. Okay, so you're not necessarily saying it the right way. Can I get past that? Because what's really important is what you're trying to tell me, not how it's coming out. I need to understand the sentiment. So one of the first things we do is we focus a lot on psychological safety, and we start at that executive team level, because we're not foolish enough to think that the executives somehow have mastered the art of being open and honest with each other. That's all the time. They're not, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's
Right?
not how I've observed it.
Yes. So that's what one of the first tools we do. We it's called the safety net. We create a safety net with everybody at that executive team level, and before they roll that out to the organization, they need to learn it and they need to master it. Just let's get good at really let's get good at conflict. Invite it, create safety, engage with it, do it differently so that people don't walk away thinking, I'm not doing that again, right? But the more you do that, in a marriage, what's on the other side of conflict is intimacy. In a business, what's on the other side of conflict, if we resolve it the right way, is engagement. I feel heard. Even if I didn't get my way, I feel heard. I feel validated. I was seen. Like, those are important things.
You know what I'm dying to say here is one of the things is the old adage, reward the behavior you want to see continue to happen.
You want to see more of.
One of the things I love to do when one of my team members comes to me and we have this conflict situation, I love to say, thank you so much for being brave enough to say this to me. Like, this is amazing. You don't have to agree with what they said to thank them for being courageous enough to bring up this topic, to speak up when other people are quiet. And I love to do that in front of other people, because then other individuals you were just mentioning, they say, oh, look, Angela appreciates honesty. She appreciates conflict. She really wants the best for us.
That's
even if you end up, exactly. It's a value that we're living here. It's that value of speak up. And it's being rewarded, and it's being kind of, the thing that you talk about the most are the things that you do, right? And so I have to throw that in to listeners. Like, one of the tools I would say is reward those individuals who in a healthy way come and provide this, right?
And so and where it's brought to you in an unhealthy way, acknowledge that somebody's remember that
making an effort.
Person cares.
Yes.
They're invested. Yes. It matters to them to not just give up and walk away. So acknowledge that, and then in private say, hey, can I give you some feedback on how that went, right? Or can I give you some feedback that I think might help you? Because my concern for you is how you're delivering the message might be louder than what you're trying to say. Or, you can figure out the right words.
That. Right. The wording.
It's the phrase that I use. Again, I learned this in marriage class, and I've taught this to leaders, and we've taught this to couples. When I need to know that Dana's not happy, and I don't want to know, but I need to know. And that's the challenge. That's the challenge to the leader who's listening is, you may not want to hear this stuff. You need to hear this stuff.
You need to.
You need
to,
right? You have to listen. You can't shut it down. So when the fact that I need to hear means I can't punish Dana in any way when she tells me something that I need to hear. So the phrase that I use is, thank you for telling me that. And then shut the hell up. Because anything I try to say in that moment is going to be, it's probably going to be like me defending myself or somehow explaining why I did what I did because she did. You don't have to solve it in the moment.
I love this.
A lot of times what I'll say is, thank you for telling me that. What else? Boy, that's like, because...
Or tell me more.
Yeah, tell me more. Tell me more.
Exactly. I think of Simon Sinek talks about this a lot in his company, and when they do their 360s and they do the reviews, that one of the things that they require is that you go into a room and you're hearing the feedback that your colleagues are giving you about how you can grow as an individual. And typically, the more it strikes your anger when you hear that, the more likely it is completely true, right? And so one of their policies is something like, all you're allowed to say is thank you. That's it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then you get to hear the things that they're saying, hey, these are the things you're doing. Keep doing these really well. And also, all you're allowed to say is thank you.
Yes.
And then you take that information because someone's taking notes or you're remembering, you're revisiting, and you contemplate it in a more calm, like less shocked environment.
Yep.
And then you process it and you try and you have this mindset, like you were saying, this mindset of listening to understand, this mindset of we should all be learning individuals. We should live our life where we're constantly learning and growing.
Right.
And so if we're learning and growing, then this idea of listening, taking those things back, and maybe just saying, instead of what do they say that's wrong? How can I argue, fight this back? How can I prove I'm right? All of these things. How can I win this discussion? Let's think of how can I learn? How can I grow? What are the snippets? And let me pull out those things and then test those, right? And then go back to the individual and say, hey, one of the things I heard you say was this, that, and the other. I was thinking about trying this technique. What are your thoughts on it? Right? How empowering would that be to the other individual? Right?
Do you know?
It's like a virtual, like a hug.
It really is. What it communicates to the other person is, I heard you, right? And I value, I listen.
And I appreciate you.
Yes. So for me, and again, I stole this from marriage class 20 years ago. In the moment, I'll say, thank you for telling me that. What else? Thank you for telling me that. And I might end with, I don't know. And she knows, she'll laugh if she was here. She's heard me say it enough, but it's genuine. It's like, I don't know what to do with that right now.
We'll encourage her to post that comment on the episode on YouTube
she'll
or
have lots to
Spotify,
say.
wherever.
She'll have lots to say. But I'd say, I don't know what to do with that right now, but give me a day or two and I'll come back with my thoughts. And what happens in that day or two, almost always there's some kind of realization that, you know what, she's right. Like I am falling short in this area, or I do need to pick it up. It's that reflecting. It's exactly what you said. It's reflecting after the emotion, because the emotion, I just want to defend myself. I want to make it her fault. And that's not productive. That would be considered unhealthy conflict. But on the other side of healthy conflict, where I hear you and I respond, and it doesn't mean I always agree. I mean, again, like we make that distinction with executive teams. Alignment does not mean agreement. You don't have to agree.
Absolutely.
You don't have to agree. And so you talk about a tool. We have a tool to help leadership teams not just say, yes, I'm aligned, or no, I'm not, but it's a tool to help them determine together, what does alignment mean here? So, like, what are the rules of alignment? We have rules of engagement. What are the rules of alignment?
I love this.
I can say, hey, are you aligned on that? Yes, I am. You too. We're aligned. Good. But we both
okay. So tell me more about how you're aligned.
We have different ideas about what it means to be aligned. What does that mean? You might think it means one thing. I think it means something else. And neither one of us was intentionally being dishonest. We didn't map it out. We didn't get clear on what does it actually mean to be aligned. So
I would venture to say that the true superpower, or the true, when you're really growing as a leader and as an individual, is when you do that follow-up. I think that is key. The key of coming back later, or asking for more, or, then maybe even I love the opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to test this new skill in this meeting. You watch and then tell me afterwards how I did or how I can do better, right? That follow-up, that next step is really, 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 really critical, because it is one thing to just listen and then shove a whole bunch of things under the rug. And then you have that, that proverbial beam of the rug with everything underneath it. And then it's super high, right? It's one thing I think that is a passive aggressive way of being in withdrawal and not being in true conflict. But I love, like, the superpower is what you're saying, is that when you say, tell me more, continue, and then you also implement some things, or you have these tough conversations and you then have output of them and say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to set a calendar reminder a week from now or a month from now or something like that. Let's revisit this conversation and see if we've had any growth on it.
Yeah, and we could also do a whole episode on passive aggression. That's another great one.
So much in especially executive teams, where you're sitting there and you're like, really? Did you just say that to me?
If you open the door, I'm just going to walk through it. There's like understanding passive aggression is the umbrella label for really a whole lot of behaviors, again, like the silent treatment is passive aggression. Angry outbursts is passive aggression. There's all kinds of a whole
Undermining the person at critical points.
Yes, actively
Exactly.
working to short circuit somebody else's success. Talking behind some gossip is so we all know passive aggressive. We know it when we see it, and it's one of those things that when it happens, it's like nobody wants to move. Everybody just kind of waits for the moment to pass, and then like somebody will say something really passive aggressive. Everybody freezes, and then somebody will go, "Okay, moving on," and right because we don't want to acknowledge it. But when you understand, this is the best definition of passive aggression. Do we have time to do this? This is the
Go for it.
This
Why
is the
not?
best definition I've ever heard of passive aggression, and it works to help a leader understand what to do when you see it. You can't just ignore it. You can't leave it. Passive aggressiveness is the prison halfway between a strong negative emotion and silence. And the lock to that prison is on the inside. So let's unpack that briefly, right? I've got some strong negative emotion, anger, frustration, resentment, bitterness, disappointment, whatever it might be. And that's on one side. And on the other side is silence. I'm not giving voice. I'm not engaging you in healthy conflict to say, Angela, can we talk about that? Because that really hurt my feelings, or I'm really feeling frustrated or ignored, or I'm not giving voice to it. I'm halfway between that strong negative emotion and silence. I've locked myself in that prison, and the lock is on the inside, because the only way that I can come out is by choosing to give voice to it. It's the only way. We think I'm gonna let it go. Nobody lets it go. We lock ourselves. Letting it go is code for I'm going to lock myself in this prison. I'm going to hold on to this. I'm just not going to say anything. So now I'm at risk for that to come out in passive aggressive ways. And we like to say that people are passive aggressive, but when you understand that definition, every one of us has the capacity.
Yeah.
Every one of us can be passive aggressive when we are locking ourselves in the prison halfway between a strong negative emotion and silence. We're not giving voice to it. The only way to release myself from that prison is by giving voice to it. So as a leader, when you see it, again, this is where the leader has to rise above the dysfunction. Because when somebody exhibits a passive aggressive behavior, you just want to swoop in and go, hey, no, can't do that. You want to meet it with aggressive aggression. You have to flip it. And remember, that person right now has locked themselves in a prison. They're holding on to something, and it's going to come out in passive aggressive ways until they give voice to it. So rather than smack somebody down for being passive aggressive, I lean in and say, Angela, you're clearly holding on to something. Like, are you okay? Talk to me. What's going on? I can hear your frustration. What's going on, right? Meeting your aggression with care and concern. And we can talk about it later.
And interest is the human as a human.
Yes. We can talk later about, okay, you might have a little bit of repair to do. Like you might have to go and apologize to some people. Maybe you need to apologize to me because of how you showed it. But if that's what I hit you with first, you're already in a prison. You're just going to get more defensive. It's understanding somebody's there because they're holding on to something, and they need somebody mature, like a leader, who is willing to create a safe place for them to come out and be heard and just dump it. And when you do that, that person is, first of all, you're modeling for them. It's also important to recognize it in yourself when you are passive aggressive, because we all do it. When I find myself, I make those mistakes and I go, okay, what am I holding on to? Who do I need to have a conversation with? What do I need to express? How do I need to reset a boundary? Or, what do I have to give voice to so that I can come out of this prison? Because I can't hide it. Everybody's going to see it. It's going to come out in passive aggressive ways.
It never reflects great on your character either.
Nope.
Because it's always twisted with stuff. And speaking of character, one of the things that you said was about owning your greatness.
Yeah.
That it's not just a key to professional success, that it's a foundation of living a purpose-filled life.
Yes.
So I know we're running a little long, but we can't We can't end this episode without talking about owning your greatness. So tell me more.
Here's a faith thing for me, but even if somebody doesn't have a walk, right, a faith walk, you can still acknowledge, right, your gifts, they come, whether it comes from, it's in your DNA, right, comes from your, so to me, the faith part of it is every single person on the planet, every single one of us has a greatness that we have been gifted. We are just stewards of that.
It's our own personal badass.
That's it. Yes, your own personal badass. I call it, it's the toolbox that I bring with me into every situation. I bring it to my marriage. I bring it to as a dad. I brought it to this podcast. I bring it to work with me. It goes with me everywhere, right? You cannot separate from it. And that's your greatness. And your unique combination of tools, your skills, your abilities, your knowledge, your wisdom, your passion, your discernments, your mistakes that you've learned from, the experience, that combination has never existed in that combination ever before, and it will never exist in that combination ever again. It truly is your greatness. And so purpose in life, I think so often we think, to live a purposeful life, I need to do something great, right? You don't have, I tell everybody I coach, go be ordinary, right? Go be ordinary, because Angela, you're a great example. When you are ordinary Angela, it is extraordinary to the rest of us. Like, when ordinary meaning just use the tools in your toolbox, just unleash what you've got. Don't be anything more than that, but you damn well better not leave any tool in the toolbox, right? Use everything you got. And you show up, when you show up and you do you, without trying to be great, you probably have a history of where you continue to impact people in really profound ways. That's living a life of purpose. It doesn't have to be anything like world worthy or noteworthy. You just have to show up and you don't leave any tools in the toolbox. So that's unleashing your greatness. And the problem is we start comparing our tools to your tools, right?
Yep.
Like,
right.
Okay, I know I'm passionate. I know I'm persuasive, but I'm not as persuasive as you are. So I'm going to leave that tool in the toolbox when I'm around you. No, like, I don't have to be. It's when we start thinking we are greater or the greatest, that's where it becomes arrogant. When we start thinking we're not as great as, that's where we start, that's where we leave the tools in the toolbox. I don't have to be. You can be great. I can be great. Every person listening right now, they can be great. All you have to do is just reach in the toolbox. Don't leave anything in there and use it. Just be a light in the darkness to impact the person in front of you. It doesn't even have to be on a grand scale. Just show up. Don't leave anything in the toolbox. Unleash that. And that's a purposeful life. That's every day impacting people in a positive way with just who you are.
I love this so much. The whole purpose of the AGN Group is that we strongly believe everyone has their own personal badass. And what my badass is different from what Patrick's badass is. And that a lot of challenges individuals have is to be brave enough to reach that personal badass. And so I think to be brave enough to use all the tools in your toolbox.
Yeah.
And you know what? It might be different from it's definitely different from day to day. It's absolutely also being brave enough to give yourself grace on the days that you're not crushing it.
Amen.
Exactly. It is part of that. And that's who you are as an individual. That's what makes you special. And that's what makes you unique. And that's why you're put on this planet as a unique individual. And so I love every bit of that. That is freaking amazing. And also, like, tying to the ideas, we strongly believe here in being constant learners. And when you go back to the conversation you said about, don't have in your mind that you're the greatest or that, you're the GOAT. Instead, think about the people around you and what can you learn from the gift you have about being surrounded from other people who have their greatness.
Yeah. And
how can you learn and continue to grow based off of that? Okay, Patrick. So, go for it.
No, it's good. We can go on forever, but.
All right. Okay. Is there anything you really hoped we'd cover today that we haven't covered yet?
This has just been a lot of fun talking about, any opportunity I get to light somebody on fire from within. I think that's maybe the last thing is people listen to podcasts to get inspired, or they listen to speakers, and they may have been inspired by this conversation. And on one hand, I like that. I hope so. But here's the reality. 5 minutes after this podcast is over, they're back in their day-to-day and the feeling is gone. And so to me, the critical part of seeing and owning and unleashing your greatness is when you need to be inspired, grab a mirror, because everything that you need in order to make an impact, in order to be extraordinary, is staring right back at you. You don't need this podcast. You don't need whatever, all the different forms. And we all do it. We get swept up in the emotion. I do it too. But when that fades, everything that you need in order to live a purposeful life, in order to make the impact that you want to make, will be staring back in the mirror. That's where you need to, because that will always be with you. That will never wane.
I love it. It ties to the idea of the dash, which is, have you read that poem, The Dash?
No.
So it's a poem by Linda Ellis. And really it talks about, on a tombstone, you have the two dates, right? And you have the date that's great joy.
Yeah.
And when you're born, and the date of sadness when you pass away. But what really matters is that line in between. And each of us have our own unique greatness, our own unique badness, our own unique line in between. And every moment to pause and sit in the fact that I'm living that line in between right now. And I do have a choice about how I want to address it, how I want to feel, how I want to move forward, and how I want to grow, how I want to learn, how I want to impact others. We have those choices in that. So that is amazing. Okay, Patrick, it is a requirement of this podcast that every guest give their favorite motivational quote, which I know for many of us, that's hard because I have like a gazillion quotes that I love. But what in your moment right now is your favorite motivational quote?
Yeah. I just used this in a conversation today with someone who's approaching 60 years old, and really just the last handful of years feels like he's hitting his stride. And he was frustrated by the fact that he's like, I lost the first 49 years of my life. And this is the quote. I used it then, I've used it. And I remind myself all the time, the greatest chapter in your life's book hasn't been written yet. So grab a pen and get writing. Because so easy, it's like we start thinking our best days are behind us, right? Like, I'm not as young as I used to be. I'm not as nimble. I'm not as fill in the blank as I used to be. The greatest chapter in your life's book hasn't been written yet. So grab a pen and get writing. It's really up to you.
I love it. Well, Patrick, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on the Badass Leaders podcast.
Thank you. This was so much fun. It's great.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the Badass Leaders podcast. To hear more interviews with industry experts and learn how to grow your career and leadership potential, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. This podcast is a production of the AGN Group. To learn more about the AGN Group, visit our website at theagnGroup.com. There, you can discover more about our services, which include hosting workshops, management consulting, brand strategy, keynote speaking, and more. Follow us on all social media channels shown on the screen and displayed in the show notes. And until next week, be brave and be badass.